Hello, and welcome back to the Big Book Project. My name is Lori Feathers, and our current read is Roberto Bolaño's 2666. And this week, we are delving into a new section of the book, this time the part about the crimes. It's a rather long section, and quite frankly, a harrowing section. And I want to talk a little bit about some of those elements today. First off, let's talk about perhaps why Bolaño does what he does in this section. And by this, I mean, and it will be obvious to anyone that gets 5 pages into this new section, this kind of litany of deaths. We know that this book is about, although sometimes it doesn't really seem that way because there's so many digressions, but it is about femicides in a northern border town in Mexico. A mass wave of crimes lasting years and years, murdering more than 200 women, most of them poor and kind of on the outer edges of society. And so when we start into this section, what has kind of been in the background, these femicides, were like hit in the face with the details of individual murders of these women. And so I wanted to explore today a little bit about what effect Bolaño is hoping to achieve with this kind of page after page, example after example of another murdered woman found. And I have some ideas that I wanted to share with you. The descriptions, of course, like I said, are detailed. They kind of address where the woman's body was found, who found it, the woman's physical description, age, height, weight, what she was wearing, straight hair, curly hair, the color of her hair, that sort of thing. How her body was abused and mutilated, often in graphic detail. Many of these women were strangled to death. Almost all of them were raped. Some of them also stabbed, burned. The cause of death sometimes is complicated because the bodies themselves have been so mutilated, and oftentimes identification is impossible. And then many times, but not all the time, we get some detail about the murdered woman's life, where she lived, where she worked. A lot of these women worked in the maquiladoras on the border. And in some cases, sadly, if they were very young, where they went to school. And then sometimes some details about their family lives, married or with, had children. Some are prostitutes. Some still live at home with their mothers, that sort of thing. And so why, again, is Bolaño doing this, giving us page after page, detail after detail, incident after incident of these found bodies? I think there's a number of reasons. One, by articulating the individual lives of these women, we're actually able to take them out of a generalized collective of, victims of a mass murder, and individualizing them makes them a little more human, a little more real to us, I think, rather than just a general swath of dead people. Another idea that I had somewhat related is that these individual descriptions of the physical attributes of the women, down to a ring that they might have been wearing, or the color of their sandals, the clothing, and like I said, the physical descriptions generally. These trigger in our minds a visualization of the victim. The physical attributes as distinctive as each of the women and girls were as individuals, as human lives. Another idea as to what Bolaño might be getting at here is by highlighting the sick regard for these women's humanity and the almost impossible to imagine cruelty of the mutilations. Just trying to get the reader to understand just how bad this situation really was, and by the accretion of these details, of these incidents, of these examples, I was just left with an overwhelming feeling of dread and horror at at these murders, and I think that that's kind of what he wants the reader to feel as well. And then contrasting to what we might feel as readers reading this, there is the whole, and I'm going to give credit where credit is due here to the philosopher Hannah Arendt. There's the overarching banality of evil here, where the society at large, even though this is happening in their midst and they're aware of what's going on, it's just kind of, they're numb to it or indifferent or apathetic. It feels almost commonplace to them. And so I think that Bolaño wants to contrast these details, these individual lives that he's painting for the reader, with this attitude in the society, amongst the police, amongst the media, that they're pretty much numb to it. They're not responding in a way that human beings should respond to the 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 horrible murders and mutilations of their fellow humankind. So that brings me to another point in the book that kind of, I think, emphasizes this banality of evil. And that is the story of the Penitent and Inspector Juan de Deos Martinez's investigation of the Penitent. So we get 8 pages into the part about the crimes, where we're hearing about these women's murders, and that continues throughout this very long section. But about 8 pages in, we learn about this other crime spree, so to speak. There's a man, no one knows who he is really, but he's going into churches. He's having an emotional, it seems, crisis, sobbing in the sanctuaries. And then he's urinating. And at some point, he takes a weapon, whether it be a hammer or a knife, and he just starts desecrating these plaster statues of religious figures within the churches. And this happens to 5 or 6 churches in Santa Teresa. And so Inspector Martinez is put on the case, and he tries to, understand what's going on. He goes to one scene, to one church where this has happened, and before long it's happened in another place, and they're all pretty similar crimes. He interviews a woman who's a director of the Santa Teresa Asylum for the Insane, and she explains to him that the Penitent, as they've come to refer to him in the police headquarters, is sacrophobic. that means he has a fear and hatred of sacred objects. And she tells Martinez that the penitent doesn't carry the knife to hurt anyone, any living thing, but only to destroy the sacred images he finds in the churches. It so happens that the penitent does end up hurting people, and he actually kills some people in the church in a few cases. But according to the director of the asylum, these are kind of I don't know, maybe collateral damage, that really what he's after is the destruction of these images, these statues, not to hurt anyone. And so it causes you to wonder, after you read several pages about this penitent and interspersed with more of these incidents of women being found dead and mutilated, what's Bolaño up to here? Why is he including this story within this section of the book? And the obvious answer is it's to show the contrast, right? It's to show how the police and the media respond to investigating the penitent and how they respond or react to the femicides. And I'll give just two examples here. There's a scene where Inspector Martinez and a group of policemen are celebrating a staff birthday at work. And while this celebration is going on, no one notices that a mortician is in the background with a stretcher that's carrying another dead woman. They're just kind of continue the celebration, don't even see it. It doesn't really register with them at all. Meanwhile, there's all these policemen that have been put on the case of trying to find the penitent, and all this time is being put into a focus on this particular crime spree in the churches, which has injured one man and killed two others. But you've got women's bodies piling up all over the place. Another example is a reporter from Mexico City named Sergio Gonzalez comes to town, and he's been dispatched there by his newspaper because they've heard about the penitent and the crimes in the churches. And the folks at the newspaper are interested, and they want a story on it. So Sergio comes and he interviews people at the church, and he writes up his story. And a priest in one of the churches tells Sergio that that the penitent isn't the worst scourge in Santa Teresa. And there are many crimes against women that have been occurring and are still mostly unsolved. But Sergio basically, it goes in one ear out the other, and he writes up his story, goes back home to Mexico City, and doesn't show any interest or any real willingness to write or even think about what's going on with the femicides. So it seems that the symbolism of the mutilation and the desecration of these religious spaces and religious idols is being contrasted with the mutilation and desecration of human life. There's a fascination amongst the police, the media, and society with the former, and much, much, much too much indifference to the latter. The investigation of the penitent really only ends when one of the men that's accused of one of the femicides confesses to being the penitent. And this man actually is the mother of the 50-year-old victim, and which is astounding. He mutilates her in a really horrible way. He confesses to her murder as well. It's interesting that Inspector Martinez doesn't believe that this man really is the penitent. He believes that the man is mentally ill and he's just confessing because he doesn't really understand what he's saying. And Martinez really wants to continue these investigations of the penitent. Ultimately, he's taken off the case in the first few dozen pages of this section and told that resources need to go elsewhere. It's not really clear the resources are going to investigating the femicides, but he's disappointed that he can't keep investigating the incident of the penitent because he believes that the wrong man has been arrested for it. And I guess in just reading these first 80 so pages of the part about the crimes, I was struck by how this society is going to have a breakthrough, or can it have a breakthrough to kind of start recognizing, acknowledging these crimes and reacting in an appropriate way to them. It seems almost impossible. You'll remember in the last pages of the previous section, we had the fate, the character Fate, and his dream about, or his imagining the scales of justice, and the image that there really was no justice because the weights on both sides of the scales were corrupted. It feels kind of that way here. Like there's no sense of justice. Justice has been demolished in essence when it comes to trying to get justice, or even wanting justice perhaps for these women. Uh, just another example that's illustrated in the section is you have an ambulance that pulls up after a reported finding of another dead woman in an empty lot. The ambulance drivers pull up and they have to wait for the police to get there. So there's a very mutilated body laying in a field, and they go and buy tacos and come back to the ambulance and sit there eating tacos while, this mutilated woman is right there. So, this indifference, this numbness to what's going on uh, with these women, and the fact that no one knows how to make it stop, or maybe even cares enough to make it stop, is just horrific. And so I want to close the discussion today with talking about what happens at the end of this week's reading. There is a woman, a 70-year-old woman named or nicknamed La Santa, and she's purportedly a seer. She can see things almost like a prophet. She has visions. And she goes on a local radio program and enters into or goes into a trance, and she starts screaming things um, on this television program that, women are being killed in Santa Teresa. The police are doing nothing. They just watch. What are they watching? She asks. Such terrible apathy, she says. Such terrible darkness. Cold-hearted wretches, she calls them. And so we leave this section with a feeling that that there are people that see what's going on here and the injustice of it, but we're still left with a very uneasy feeling, at least I was, that I'm not quite sure anything commensurate with the response that is needed uh, will happen in this society. And I'll just close by going back to that quote that I've talked about a few times in in the Substack posts that I've been doing twice a week about these killings hold the secret of the world, even though no one is paying attention to them. And, I keep asking myself, what is this secret of the world? And I still not sure what the answer is. But I do wonder whether or not we'll even see it as readers. But maybe it's justice. Maybe it's that we've lost our humanity, we've lost our morality, we've lost our justice. And but who is going to see that? Who's going to recognize it? It's being presented to us as readers in a way that it seems that society at large is seeing it differently. So is this secret? Will it be revealed to Inspector Martinez, to Amalfitano, to the critics, to fate? It's going to be really interesting to see how these characters and their storylines eventually come together. But I just have to think that they're all going to revolve around their recognition or failure to recognize this huge injustice, this secret of the world that is happening in Santa Teresa right before their eyes. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to next time. And please follow the Substack posts, and please comment on them. We've gotten some really great comments, and it's been really fun to see those and to see what you're thinking about the book and how you're liking it. Till next time.